everyone, Will Brink here, brinkzone.com. Today, I want to cover a topic mostly for competitors, physique competitors, but I think any fans of bodybuilding, old, especially like back in the day, bodybuilding, 80s, 90s, I think will enjoy this discussion. And when I get to the judging part, maybe that's not, will only be interesting to competitors. But I want to have a little bit of a contextual background talk before I give my thoughts and advice to competitors and what they can do to improve their placings. But, I was an NPC regional judge for almost 20 years. And during really what was the peak of bodybuilding as far as popularity and turnout to shows, magazine sales, again, we're talking pretty much pre-internet or in the very earliest parts of internet. So, and if you guys know me, or those who know me know that I used to write for all the magazines. I worked with a number of pro bodybuilders and other athletes and so forth. But I was also a judge, like I say, an NPC regional judge, New England regional judge for about 20 years. And for some fun context, I was never a national level guy. I was really a regional level. But when I was judging, it was like I say, it was the peak of bodybuilding in an area that was really where many of the top people were coming out of, and we'll name a few names there. But again, if any of you are old enough to remember what how much fun bodybuilding was and how much excitement there was. I mean, I don't think some people don't even realize that. The Miss Olympia at one time was held at Madison Square Garden and was on, NBC Sports in Saturday afternoon. I mean, this was Miss Olympia, much less Mr. Olympia, so there was a time where bodybuilding really was actually doing really well, popularity wise, and the numbers were, pretty high. Now, like show wise, again, we had as many guys in a single class when I first started judging as we did in the entire show. 10, 15 years later, we'd have 50, 60 guys in one class. And I remember towards the end of my judging time, that was kind of the whole show, was maybe 50, 60 people. And we'll get to, some differences by today's stuff. Always got to clear my throat, of course, in the middle of a goddamn video. Never fails. Anyway, so the shows, the quality of the shows, and I want to kind of talk about that. The quality of the shows were very, very high. I mean, especially as New England at the time was really a hotbed of where some of the best bodybuilders were coming out of. We're talking about Mike Matarazzo. We're talking about Paul DeMayo. We're talking about Jay Cutler. We're talking about people like Craig Licker. Not a name some of you will probably be aware of. Craig was an excellent bodybuilder, but he was not one of the big guys. He was a smaller bodybuilder. We also had lots of guys from the region who were right top of the line. The USAs and the Nationals. They might not have ended up being a big name, but they were always right there, winning their class, that type of thing. Now, to add to that, again, if you ever looked at the lineup, the top lineup of what the USAs and the Nationals used to look like, the top 10 guys were better or as good as anybody in the pro line today, if not better, honestly, by my standards. Again, physiques have changed, but if you actually look at the names, that were in that top 10 of the USAs and the NPCs, the depth of quality of those shows was like nothing you'll see today. I don't think anybody would deny that. I mean, maybe the top pro guys today are as good, in different ways as maybe some of them would have been then, but the depth was no comparison as far as, like you say, what your top 10. So in general, the number of people competing, the quality of it, I think was just a higher caliber. But there were a lot of other guys there, like Lucio Paolini, great bodybuilder, guy named Lenny Dasneves. He wasn't Boston area. He was a little south of Boston. But if you were at any local show in the New England area, especially in the Boston area, it was the who's who of people that went on to be well-known bodybuilders of the time, and very, very high quality. So I'm sort of getting this to say that though I might not have been judging national level shows, I will say that the quality of the shows that I was judging were very high. These were not, local yokel. I didn't judge a couple of small shows in the boonies and feel like I was qualified to give judging opinions. I think that I was in the midst of the best of the best at the time, certainly on a regional level. And when you went to the nationals shows to watch, which I did, I didn't judge them, but I would go watch. And, invariably, again, the same guys, some of the same guys I had been judging would be at those shows, and they'd be doing well and they'd be winning. Another guy, Fred Big O, was another guy who was a really impressive bodybuilder. So I'm giving this context to sort of give people a sense that are watching this, that I think my qualifications for giving some of these opinions are pretty good. And again, I also, of course, did contest prep for a number of well-known people back in the day and all that. But this is going to be from a judging perspective. Now, you also have to remember that there was just bodybuilding and fitness routine, fitness. We had, but there wasn't physique, there wasn't bikini, there wasn't, even there was female bodybuilding, of course. Figure came along while I was judging, but I mean, we didn't have all the divisions that we have now. We really, these were pretty much straight bodybuilding shows, and then of course you had fitness, and fitness was, it's a shame, just a little sidetrack here, that fitness is not as popular as it used to be, but fitness is honestly probably the hardest thing to do in all of. If you look at what those girls do, you have to do basically everything figure does and have the routine. And the routines were, tremendous amount of work. And some of them were, when you watch the athleticism of the fitness, it was pretty impressive. And, understandably, fitness is not as popular because it's just so damn hard. And you've got to have, you obviously have to have a gymnastics background or cheerleading background or dance background or something. So anyway. So remember, we were judging just bodybuilding for the most part, and again, towards the later part of judging, bikini came in. That was kind of interesting because at the time, nobody knew what it was supposed to look like. We really didn't have really solid criteria. It was more or less a beach body. I mean, the girl that came with sort of the best shape, proportions, a bit of muscle tone, but not too much, and so forth to win. But there wasn't a lot of criteria. And again, that whole division, of course, has really become something. So that's kind of my background to judging and where I was at the time. And like I say, though it was regional level, it was pretty extensive. I judged, New England's and Gold Classic, and Jay Cutler. Later on, Jay Cutler even had his own show called the Cutler Classic, which I judged again towards the later mass states, but I also judged in Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Maine, all of New England, down to stopping at New York. New York obviously had its own people, but mostly Massachusetts, like I said, was a hotbed. So that's giving you hopefully some background. And those were some good times, and really a cool, really a cool place to be. I like to say that actually I'm kind of the Forrest Gump of bodybuilding. I just happen to be like in the right place at the right time in so many ways. Now that I look back, where I was and people that I met and things that I got to do and all that. Of course, like anytime you wish that you knew how special it was at the time, like you took it for granted. But anyway, another story for another day. Anyway, so let's get on to discussion with that background, and I'll put time stamps into some point so that those who are interested in the background can listen to that and check out when we talk judging. But again, I think fans, who want to know what goes on, what judges recommend and what judges see and all that. And I don't know, honestly, how many experienced judges are giving these tips. Maybe they are. I don't know. I don't watch the shows. And honestly, again, I stopped going to shows. I kind of checked out of the industry and bodybuilding for a while, and to do other stuff, So I haven't, since I moved to Florida, I actually trying to go back, maybe start attending more like local regional shows, because in Florida, of course, there's like one every weekend. In New England, it was like there was a season for bodybuilding, which because the weather is so bad that basically all the shows were like in the middle of spring and summer. So we had like a bunch of shows to judge but in Florida they're like all the time. So let's in no particular order here. I'm going to cover some things that if you're a competitor. Now, obviously, this sort of applies to bodybuilders, but it really applies to any physique athlete. I mean, I think these are things that I saw mostly in bodybuilding, but most of this will apply to you if you are a competitive athlete, regardless of what division you're in. So here's one. Some of them are going to sound sort of common sense-ish, but I if they were that common sense, I think more people would be doing it, and taking advantage, of these quote unquote, they're not tricks, but you know what I'm saying, to do better. But people cost themselves placings big time by some of this stuff. Now let's basic stage presence. Stage presence is you can develop stage presence, right? Now there's no doubt that some people have natural stage presence and some don't, but you absolutely can develop stage presence. And obviously you should come out looking confident. And I understand that you're going out in front of a bunch of people, basically in your underwear, under lights. I have no doubts at all how nerve-wracking that is and how hard it is to look confident and look happy to be up there and all that. And I obviously, especially when you're, again, local, regional level, this maybe it's your first show, maybe you've done a few shows, I don't know, but I will say that stage presence can be developed. It's something that, again, if you're working with someone who judges, if you're working with maybe other competitors who understand that, posing coaches and so forth. But this is really a big one. You'd be surprised how many people are losing points, with judges because of just the poor stage presence. Now, that's not necessarily a conscious thing on the judges. They're not saying, oh, his body's great, but his stage presence is no good, so I'm going to mark him down per se. And again, at the higher levels, again, those things count more and more, obviously, as you get up to national and pro levels, because such small differences. But judges are human beings, and they're going to connect with your body language and your facial expressions, and want and unconsciously are going to be making decisions about how they interpret what you're doing up there. And it really, to work on that stage presence is a really big thing, right? You see a lot of people go up there, their posing is decent, they're in good shape, but they look like a deer caught in headlights. They have no stage presence. Their eyes are darting around. They look nervous. And again, I completely understand why you would feel that way, but you have to understand from our point of view, from the judge's point of view, that that's something that both consciously we're aware of and unconsciously connecting to, and that just makes us human. So another one is, if you get called out, you always get called out at some point, but let's say you're being called out regularly, you're out, coming out a lot, you're being moved around and stuff, because we feel that obviously we're trying to place you where we're trying to place you, and maybe you're in the top 5, maybe you're in the top 10, and then you get sent back to the line. Don't relax. All right, this happens a lot. All right. Even at the pro levels, I think they're better about it than they used to be, but it's certainly at the regional levels. But when you get sent back, you're okay. Thank you very much. Go back. Don't go back and just relax. Okay, we're still looking at you back there. Okay, every little thing counts. Don't go back and just deflate. And obviously, there's the obvious thing about you're a male bodybuilder. Don't let your tummy hang out. That's an obvious one. But I mean, in general, we're still looking at you. When you go back there, we're still keeping an eye on you. Go back there. Just don't. Obviously, you need to relax a little bit because you're going to cast out. But stand tall. Keep your waistline tight, not flexing, but look confident, look happy back there. But don't just relax, because like I say, we are looking at you back there. We're not forget you're back there. Yeah, we're obviously paying attention to the line that's in front of us right now that was called out by the head judge. Or sometimes I as a judge or other judges say, hey, I'd like to see him over there. Would you replace so and so with so and so? But don't relax back there. Okay, and a lot of times that is part of the little tiny differences that actually start to make decisions between 11th and 12th, or 13th and 15th, 8th and 9th. When look, you have to understand sometimes, especially depends on the show, but many times at a show, actually picking top 1, 2, and 3 is actually really easy. It's pretty quick. What is more difficult is 11 from 12, 8 from 10. Now think about it. I mean, what makes the difference between 11 and 12, right? Well, the difference between 11 and 12, or 13 and 14, or whatever, is actually going to be smaller. These are getting down to the really, really little differences now that you're looking for than it might be between 1 and 2, or 2 and 3, or some. Again, depends on the show, but I can tell you that we as judges know, and of course some judges are competitive athletes and some are not. Some are people like myself who, again, have worked with trained bodybuilders, done their, diets and all that, know the amount of effort that is put into this. And so we are really wanting to look for every little thing we can to put to fairly place somebody. We want the proper person to be 9th, who should be 9th versus 10th, right? The person who should be 11th versus 12, or whatever. So it's actually, in my experience, maybe some other judge will disagree, or somebody will pop up, that it's actually harder to decide, like say, who is going to be 11th versus 12th than 1 or 2 versus 3 or something. And again, I appreciated the fact that, being 10th versus 11th is a big deal. You want to be 10. I mean, if you can crack top 10, let's say, again, you've competed a couple times, you're trying to work your way up, and 10th versus 11th is a big deal to somebody. Maybe in the crowd or as a fan or something, you may or may not appreciate that. But if you're competing, 10th versus 11th is a big deal. 8th versus 10 is a big deal. So we're looking for all the little things that differentiate, like I say, sometimes where it gets harder and harder to judge. And I actually usually found, not always, but many times I found it actually harder to decide those higher numbers than the lower numbers. Not always. Again, sometimes, 1, 2, and 3 are pretty obvious. For myself, I would usually have that figured out pretty quickly. And again, you might swap them around. I might change my mind as time went on. I would, if it was close, of course, then I would, of course, scrutinize the hell out of it and really try to figure it out, because I could tell you that in my experience, 20 years of judging, everyone there really wanted to reward, the difficult work that people had put to be up there. We understood, we appreciated that. So, here's one that, a common mistake, which again, you see at the pro level, we see it all over the place. I just watched the recent Mr. Olympia streaming, and I saw it with a number of people. Color. I know you're going to, well, gee, that sounds so damn simple. Well, look, if it was so simple, why are so many people still getting this wrong, man? Good color, proper color. A lot of times you have to also remember that the lights up there are very bright. So you need to definitely be darker. Usually you need to be darker than you think you do. As you looked in the gym lights or the bathroom lights or whatever, and you thought, okay, this is good, you may be really washed out. Now, again, different theaters have different lights. It's not, now I usually judged like the big shows, the big regional shows in Boston were usually held at two different theaters. So I kind of knew the lighting and the setup really well, what to expect, but you don't. I mean, if you haven't competed, now if you have, you even have less excuse. But color-wise, obviously, the proper color for your skin tone, for your skin type, different colors look different on different people. You need to experiment. You need to talk to people. You need to look at videos. You need to go to shows. You need to do all your homework to make sure you've got the right color for you, the amount of color you need. Because, again, I just saw it. There was a couple bodybuilders at the Mr. Olympia. They were all washed out. I think they would have, at least one guy would have done better if he had proper color, the adequate coloring. Don't take that for granted. This makes a big difference, especially, again, it makes a particularly big difference. Let's say you have two guys or gals, again, female bodybuilding, unfortunately, is close to dead, but it's making a comeback. But anyway, right now we're going to talk about the guys. But okay, you have two guys, and they're fighting for 6th and 7th, right? Now, if they are comparable, let's say, as far as you're concerned, conditioning, symmetry, proportion, posing, whatever, and one guy uh, doesn't have coloring and doesn't have proper coloring, doesn't have is not properly oiled, is too much, too little, whatever. Well, that's where he's going to place. He's going to place behind the guy who's got it all together plus the color, right? And again, that can make the difference between 5th and 6th, 8th and 9th, 10th, whatever. Obviously, the guys in the top 5 are going to have this together, right? Nobody that doesn't have all that together is probably going to be anywhere near the top 5 unless you just have a really shallow show as far as the depth of quality. But we're assuming these are later numbers. But again, that could be 9th and 10th. And 9th and 10th matters, especially if you're trying to work your way up. This again sounds like a simple one, but man, I see it at the regional levels. I've seen it at the national levels, and I see it at the pro levels. Posing costs trophies. Poor posing really, really costs trophies. Posing is actually difficult. Again, the good ones make it look easy, but good posing to your shape, your physique type, whether it's thick, dense, muscular physique, whether it's more symmetrical, small waist, big waist, whatever. Learning how to pose and pose to your strengths and hiding your weaknesses is huge. Is big a deal, almost as big a deal as coming in shape. You'll see guys up there, and the crowd or whatever get mad at you. The person might be actually have done his homework and he's in pretty good shape, but he can't pose. And he doesn't pose to his strengths. He's his weaknesses are there because he's not doing a very good job of trying to accentuate his strengths and sort of tone down the weaknesses if you can visually, which there's a lot of things you can do. Again, I think the good posers will show that. But I don't know how many times I saw it and how many times I still see it, and I don't know why that's still a thing. But posing, it will make or break. Posing can make or break first place to dead last. I mean, so I don't know. I shouldn't have to say this, but I guess I have to, because again, I want to drill that home to people, because again, I watched some pro shows, and of course I have gone to the Arnold Classic many years, and the Olympia as press, and sat in the press box, and so watching pro shows. I might not have been judging them, but believe me, I was right there front watching. And you need to learn to pose to your strengths and de-emphasize your weaknesses. Okay, if you have a wider waist, then you have to learn to pose in what we call like an S curve, which is so that your waist is kind of twisted. Your makes your waist look smaller. You can learn how to turn a leg out to get a little more quad sweep. It's called an S curve. I can't really do it in the camera. But don't let your ego get in the way, or all your friends, your psycho friends around you telling you how great you are, get in the way of somebody, whether it's you, because nobody can look in the mirror and be honest with themselves. That's just how we are. It's human nature. Get somebody, again, whether it's a judge or another bodybuilder you trust or whatever, to be honest with you and say, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses, because everybody has weaknesses. There is no, other than Flex Wheeler at his peak, I can't think of anybody else that doesn't have weaknesses. I think Flex Wheeler at his peak was about as close to a bodybuilder without a weakness as I can possibly think of. But here nor there, nobody is without their weaknesses. And if you don't learn to pose to accentuate your strengths and de-emphasize your weaknesses, you're going to be wondering why you're not placing higher, even though you came in shape and your friends are all telling you how great you looked, and you blame the judges. But I can assure you it's your fault most of the time. So work on that. Again, one of the big mistakes everybody does, is just human nature. But again, bodybuilders, everybody who's getting ready for show wants to hear good things. They want to feel positive. They want their friends to say how great they look. And I understand that, but that doesn't win trophies. Okay. So what wins trophies is you're knowing how to pose, and posing properly to in general posing, not just your strength, but just being good at posing and hitting your poses, hitting poses and all that, hitting poses that are best, again, for your physique. And work on that. All right. That's my advice. What a lot of people learn the hard way, and again, surprisingly, at some pretty high levels, but not as much as I think I used to see, but still, this is not just a local thing. Is posing is hard work. Okay, posing. Again, it may look easy, but to pose all the muscles properly and hold them sometimes for a long time. If a show is close and you're out there and you're posing in those hot lights, I used to see guys gas out all the time. And again, seeing them gas out again in the pro level was not uncommon. And I don't understand that. Okay, you need to be posing at least 30 minutes a day for at least 2 weeks out. Okay, 2 weeks out every single day for 30 minutes straight. And if you can't do that, then you're probably not ready. You're probably going to cost you. It's probably going to cost you a placing or 2 or 3 or whatever. But I have no doubt there's somebody out there nodding their head going, Will is telling it like it is. But it's surprising at how high a level you can go and still see people gassing out. You would think that they had gone through local regional shows, got to national level shows and all that, and knew how difficult posing could be. And yet, again, so that's something you really have, and that's minimum, and again, I feel posing is also part of getting into shape. But I think the minimum, 30 minutes every single day, at least a couple of weeks up to the show is a dead minimum. You should be able to do it. And again, you should be able to do it looking like you're dying, without looking like you're going to gas out, without looking like your face is turning bright red. I know you can only go up to a point, but there's some shows, like I say, that were so close that the head judge and we at the panel were moving people around because it was such a close show, and they were up there a lot longer than expected. They were gassing out. Sometimes they had to bow out, and that's not good. Don't do that. Okay. One little trick, I think most people know this, but if you don't, again, I've seen this mistake. Always pose from the ground up. Okay. Always plant your feet, get your legs, pose, flex, whatever you're going to do, then hit your upper body, pose, whatever that may be. I think people are better about that than they used to be, especially at the upper levels. I don't see too many people making that mistake, but it is not, again, you're nervous. There's a lot of noise. People are yelling. You're tired and all that. And it's really easy for people to start posing from the top down and forget to really pose their legs properly and get their lower body anchored down and fixed as to what they're trying to do, and then get the upper body. That's a small one, but it can begin, if you're not aware of it, it can make or break you. Another one, communicating visually with the judges, looking at the judges. So remember, when you're posing in the gym, in the lights, or wherever you are, you're looking straight ahead at the mirror. Remember, we're down here, right? And almost always, not always, but 95% of the shows, you're up on a stage, we're down, we're looking up at you. You're used to looking straight ahead when you're posing instead of looking down at the judges. And again, communication, eye-to-eye contact, confidence, stage presence, all that matters. And a lot of times, again, you'd see people, because they were so used to posing in mirrors and posing for people that were at eye level to them or whatever, they don't look down and they're just looking out at the crowd or looking up into the lights or whatever. And again, that is part of stage presence, but I think it's a big deal, again, to look down at the judges and communicate to them visually, again, eye-to-eye contact, that you're there to win. You came to place high, that, and even if that's a subliminal message that's going back and forth, between us, it matters. It does. It gets in there. The person that looks confident and assured and knows that's where they're supposed to be. Yeah, it gets through. Don't think it doesn't. Okay, so I think that's all the major stuff. If you have any comments, questions, whatever below, that I didn't cover or something, leave that. And finally, I'm going to get to the big one. fixing shows. You know, because people love to, well, you know what? You know, I'm not going to do that one yet. Give me one more. I forgot. I haven't, I'm looking over my notes, but this is a big one. And then we'll get to fixing shows, whether I've ever seen a show get fixed. Feedback after the show. I don't know why I didn't do this one, because it's a pet peeve of mine. Okay, 20 years of judging. After every single show, big shows, 200 guys, 300 guys, women, all that, maybe one or two would come up to us at the judging table afterward and ask for feedback. Blows my mind. That, if there's anything of all the things, you know what? I should have made this first. If there's anything of all the things I just went through, feedback from the judges who are judging you is probably your number one priority. Because why? Because all the other things I covered, they might say all those things. You looked good, but your color was off, or you could improve your posing, or what have you. So, but what blows my mind is the few people, how few we would get coming up to get feedback. And I will also tell you that, you know, you'd often see the same people season after season working, you know, trying to improve their placings. And I will absolutely tell you the ones that would come up and get feedback every season did better, because they listened, and they would come back and say, you know, how did I look this year? What did you think? And I or somebody else would say, look, man, yeah, you looked great. You look better than last year. You were harder, but you could have done this, you could have done that. And they nod their head. And the ones that followed it, always placing got better and better, because you would, you know, see years of the same people coming back and doing their best. What you saw more often was somebody storm off in a huff, have all of his friends tell him how he should have placed higher and he should have won, and then they go home. Don't do that. Okay. And I don't care if it's local, regional, national, pro, don't care. Don't let your ego, your coach, your friends, whatever, tell you how you got robbed and all that, because they're not the ones judging the show. Okay. We're judging the show, or the judges are judging the show. And the best thing you can do for yourself usually is go talk to the judges. Now, I used to keep notes. And also a lot of the other people with me, I think they did too, generally. But I always made little commentary notes, so that if the person came to talk to me, I could give them feedback, and I wanted to give them feedback. And I will tell you also, which should come as no surprise to anyone, that the women were much more likely to come and get feedback than the men were, because they didn't let their ego get in the way. And again, if they came back and got feedback as to what they could do better next time, it always helped. So yeah, I wish I had started with that one, but I just looked at my notes and realized that I hadn't written that down. But that's probably as big as any of them, because yeah, that one will probably cover all the stuff that I was mentioning about, like say, posing, color, so forth. But always, unless you won the show, but even then, doesn't hurt. But if you didn't win the show, go talk to the judges and get feedback, and don't let your ego get in the way of how, you know, or your friends tell you that you should have won the show and all that, because they're not judging the show. And I can also tell you that a good eye for judging is actually not that common, which is why you have to test, and that's another show for another day. Okay, so here's one, and this is kind of going to be maybe anticlimactic, because you're all going to be waiting for some from some really deep discussion or juicy discussion on fixing shows. All right, almost 20 years of judging shows. I never had one single person, promoter, head judge, sponsor, anybody tell me who was going to win a show. Not once. Fixing, you know, and of course somebody would invariably at the end of a show yell something like, "Show is fixed," you know, my friend or my buddy or whatever should have won. Not one time in all the years of judging did anybody ever tell me, you know, who should win, or who we were expecting to win, who they wanted to win, you know, slipped me money, offered to sleep with me, anything like that. You know, fixing bodybuilding shows is not that easy to do. Okay. You for one thing, you know, they throw out scores that are high and low. So to fix a bodybuilding show, you've got to get you got to take all the judges, put them in a room and say, okay, guys, here's who we want you to pick. Here's who we expect to win. Now, I can only speak from my experience and my, you know, who I dealt with. I cannot obviously speak to any other region, any other promoters, any other thing. I know that things go on, things can happen in any sport, right? I mean, you know, look what just happened with FIFA, the scandal there, and MLB. I mean, so let's not pretend, you know, bodybuilder is any less or more prone to anything like that. But all I will tell you is that I think I was pretty in the trenches to a fairly adequate degree to, if, you know, if it was going to happen, I really think that I think somebody would have. I think somebody would have tried it. And again, I'm not going to say it's never happened. I'm not going to say it can't happen. I'm just going to. What I do want to say is it never happened with me. You know, I'm kind of disappointed nobody offered to sleep with me to improve their placing. Not that I would have done it, but FYI, I was a little disappointed that nobody even offered. Having said that, like I say, let me just say that it's a lot more difficult to fix a show, like hardcore fix a show that so-and-so is going to win who probably didn't deserve to win. Again, it's actually a fairly small community out there, and, you know, everybody kind of knows everybody, and maybe it can get a little dicey as to conflicts of interest. That, of course, can exist. That's another topic, but it's not in any way like I say, hey, you know, hey guys, here's X amount of money to throw, you know, for so and so to win. Never happened to me. All right, so I think that's everything. If you like this video, please like it, please subscribe to this, and if, of course, brought to you by Alpha Joe. Tastes good, feels good, good for you. Trifecta of win, and see y'all on the brink zone. Oh, I gotta get couldn't hit the off button. See y'all.